This year's men's singles US Open is the most wide open it's been in years. Our two major winners in 2024, Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz, both faced their own challenges, Sinner with a PR crisis and Alcaraz with injury concerns. Meanwhile, Novak Djokovic is riding high after finally securing that Olympic gold medal in Paris, though questions still linger about his knee. Will one of these three claim the year's final major, or will we see a new champion crowned in Flushing for the third time in 4 years? Hey, my name is Christian Bassnight and welcome to Christian's Court, where I cover tennis from all angles. If you have not yet already, make sure you subscribe and click that notification bell so you're notified whenever I post more US Open content, and so you join Christian's crew. We love to have you and help me reach my goal of making it to 20K subscribers. Now, looking at the projected quarterfinalists on tap at this year's Open, Jannik Sinner and Daniil Medvedev might meet for the third time at a major this season. Carlos Alcaraz and Hurkacz could square off, followed by Casper Ruud and Alexander Zverev. Then Andrei Rublev might take on Novak Djokovic in this last 8 spot. The top-seeded Sinner will open against Maggie McDonald and could then meet another American and Alex Michelsen in the second round, and then 26th-seeded Nico Jarry in the third, Tommy Paul in the round of 16, Daniil Medvedev in the quarters, Alcaraz in the semis, and Djokovic in the finals. Sinner is guaranteed to play his first 2 matches against talented Americans. First, of course, Maggie McDonald, and then he will face the winner of Young Guns, Eliot Spirizzi, and Alex Michelsen, and both guys are very talented. And Spirizzi, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but he scored a very good final round qualies win over Joao Fonseca. That match was incredible, by the way. But anyways, I think that both those guys could trouble Jannik a tad in that second round match, and they could win a set or two, but I still think that Sinner will progress. Michelsen, by the way, is currently in the Winston-Salem Open 250 final. I think that they will be a bigger threat to him as opposed to his potential third round, where he could face the 26th-seeded Jarry. Nicolas Jarry is low on confidence, however. He is on a 6-match losing streak since making the Rome finals. The fourth round are where things are likely to get even more tricky again, as Sinner will potentially face 14th seed Tommy Paul. Paul, though, has a difficult opener against Lorenzo Sonego, who is also in the Winston-Salem Open final. Arthur Fils is there as well, and if he's on his game, he can cause problems for Tommy. I think that Paul does have the advantage of being American and can use the crowd to take him through this first week. Paul, I think, has the potential to challenge Sinner for sure, although he is not in the greatest form heading into the Open, and for that reason, I will give Jannik the edge in the win to make the quarterfinals. Next is Daniil Medvedev's section, and just being quite honest, this is the worst form that Daniil has been in ahead of a US Open, and probably his entire career. He is 2-3 since making the Wimbledon semifinals, as he lost opening round in Canada and Cincinnati. Focusing up top, though, I think there is a good chance that Stefanos Tsitsipas might be upset in the first round as he plays a tricky Aussie opponent in Thanasi Kokkinakis. Felix Auger-Aliassime is in slightly better form right now, in my opinion, as opposed to Tsitsipas, so I'll have him go through to reach the second week. He does face talented young Czech team Jakub Mensik in the opening round, although Mensik has not had a lot of great results since the earlier part of this season. Medvedev's draw is not the best. Fabian Marozsan is tough, but even tougher is Flavio Cobolli, who reached the finals in DC. I was close to having Cobolli beat Medvedev and make the quarterfinal even, but I remembered that Daniil always turns up for the slams and loves the best-of-5 format. And not to mention, he is a former champion, US Open champion, and a 2-time finalist. I was close to having Felix be my quarterfinalist, but because of those factors that I just mentioned, I'm putting the more experienced Medi into the Elite 8. 2022 champion Carlos Alcaraz will start against Aussie qualifier Elite 2 and could then get Denis Shapovalov in round 2, Jack Draper in the third, Sebi Korda in the fourth round, Hubert Hurkacz in the quarters, Sinner in the semis, and Nole in the final. I think that Carlitos honestly does not have a good draw. He could face 2 flashy lefties and Shapovalov in the second round, followed by, of course, Draper in the third. Those are very tough, to be honest. And the last time that we saw Alcaraz on a court, professionally wise, he was very out of sorts. It was Cincinnati in his opening round match against Gael Monfils, and he lost that match, of course, and said that it was his worst match that he's ever played. You know, we could blame all of the tennis that he's played and the constant transitioning of the surfaces, so really the Cincinnati loss shouldn't be a total surprise, but also it could be still mental and the disappointment of him losing the Olympics final. And to me, that was the worst loss, not as far as him playing bad, but just the most heartbreaking loss that he has had in his young career thus far. Moving past the first week, things won't get easier for him if he does end up playing Sebastian Korda in the round of 16, as Korda won the DC 500 and made the semifinals in Montreal. I think that Korda does have a good shot at beating Carlos, to be honest. Alcaraz, as I mentioned, likely isn't in the best form, and he could be a bit gassed from all the tennis that he has played. And then even more big, to be honest, are the reports of him rolling his ankle very badly in practice today and him having to leave the court in distress and in disappointment, so we definitely need to keep an eye out on that. Again, Alcaraz's draw looks very difficult on paper, but I could see it opening, and I would not be surprised if, Shapovalov, Draper, and Korda didn't even make it far enough to play him. I will be bold with this one, though, and say that Korda will win this section and make the quarterfinal. Next is Hubert Hurkacz's section, which is the most open section by far in this men's draw. The two highest ranked players, Hurkacz himself and Alex de Minaur, still are working their way back from their respective injuries suffered at Wimbledon. Alex de Minaur has not played a singles match since SW19, and I would say that Hurkacz has the best chance of coming through here, but he did retire mid-match in the Cincinnati quarterfinals against Tiafoe, likely due to that meniscus surgery. Karen Khachanov is not in good form at all, but he does have a decent draw to where he could round himself back into form. I'm actually favoring Montreal semifinalist Matteo Arnaldi to prevail here in this section. He made the US Open 4th round last year, so he does enjoy the conditions, and I can see him going on another good run in Flushing this year. Moving on to the bottom half of the draw, 2022 finalist Casper Ruud looks to put his disappointing summer behind him, as he has a nice draw here in New York. Sasha Bublik in round 3, he does have a great game, but he has not looked that great at all recently. Neither has Ugo Humbert, the 17th seed, and then Taylor Fritz, he also lost early in the North American hardcourt swing. Fritz could face Matteo Berrettini in the second round, and Berrettini is a former semifinalist. I could see the Italian shake things up for sure, and he always seems to bring his best tennis for the US Open. That Fritz Berrettini round 2 will decide the winner of this section, in my opinion. Fritz gets the edge to me due to having the home crowd advantage, as well as him having a 3-0 head-to-head lead over the Italian. Thus, I am going to have Taylor reach his second consecutive US Open quarterfinal. Alexander Zverev was supposed to open against Emil Ruusuvuori, but the man from Finland just withdrew, and he will now get compatriot and lucky loser Maximilian Monterer. The German Zverev is projected to play Alexander Müller in the second round, Francisco Cerundolo in the third, Holger Rune in the fourth, Casper Ruud in the quarterfinals, Djokovic in the semis, and Sinner in the final. Recent Cincy semifinalist Holger Rune is up top, and he has a very difficult opening round match against Brandon Nakashima, who has a 2-0 head-to-head advantage over the Dane. Nakashima has also been playing very well lately. He got some good wins over Fritz and Tommy Paul, and I really could see Brandon getting the upset here, especially with having the crowd behind him. Lorenzo Musetti has also been playing well. He gets big serving Riley Opelka, though, who is still on the comeback from that long hiatus. Lorenzo has had a great summer, and he can continue that stretch of form here and be a big threat to Zverev, who beat him, or who he beat at the Olympics. Still, I think that Alexander will be pleased with his draw, as his projected seed Francisco Cerundolo is not a great hardcourt player and is not playing well lately. I think he's more likely to face either Giovanni Umpechi-Pericard or Thomas Martin Echeverry, who will play each other in that first round. The German definitely has a big threat looming in either Holger Rune or Lorenzo Musetti and being a fourth-round opponent, but to be honest, there is a decent chance that neither of those guys will even make it to the second week and could be knocked out in the first round. I think this being best of 5 also would favor Zverev even more should he play either of those two younger guys, and also because of his somewhat decent form last week in making the Cincinnati semifinals, I will put Alexander into the quarterfinals yet again. Andrei Rublev's section is another boring one, to be honest. Rublev is set to face Yuri Lehechka in the third round, and I think that they will play each other. Chris Eubanks could play Rublev in the second round, but I do not think that Big Banks will be much of a threat to the Russian. Rublev's had a tough go at the majors lately, and I could see Lehechka knocking him out of there in the round of 32. Andre has made the quarterfinals in the last 2 U.S. Opens that he's played, and I think that he will do it again. Looking at the bottom half of this draw, though, Sebastian Baez, he honestly is not a factor to me. He's primarily a threat on the clay courts. Grigor Dimitrov has not looked entirely great since that Wimbledon injury, and I think that Alejandro Davidovich Fokina could be a threat for the Bulgarian in the second round. Rublev is in the best form, currently doing well in both Montreal and Cincinnati, so I think that he would take down Dimitrov should they play in the round of 16. And then last but not least, Novak Djokovic starts his title defense against qualifier Radu Albat, and the Serb could face Jan-Lennart Struff in the second round, Alexei Popyrin in the third, Ben Shelton in the fourth round, Andrei Rublev in the quarters, Zverev in the semis, and Jannik Sinner in the final. This Novak draw is very intriguing. Alexei Popyrin, the Montreal champion, is a potential third-round opponent for the defending champion, and they've played twice in the majors this year, and the Aussie has pushed him to 4 tight sets in both of those occasions. I see another battle on the card should these two meet in New York, but I believe that Novak will once again prevail. In the fourth round, Djokovic will likely play an American in either Ben Shelton or Frances Tiafoe. Those two, Tiafoe and Shelton, played in the quarterfinals last year, but this time they are set to meet in the third. Tiafoe has been in slightly better form than Shelton this summer hardcourt swing, making the DC semifinals and, of course, finishing runner-up in Cincinnati. Shelton does hold a 2-0 head-to-head advantage over Tiafoe, but I'm going to go with form over head-to-head in this one and put Big Fro through to meet the Joker and then have the 4-time champion Novak into the quarterfinals. For my predictions in the semifinals, I have Sinner and Korda going up against one another, followed by Djokovic and Zverev. And then I have a Sinner-Zverev final, which would be a rematch of the Cincinnati Open semifinals. And this time I'll keep the same result with having Sinner take the trophy and win this match. Now, addressing my snubs, I have Paul, Tsitsipas, and Felix Auger-Aliassime being the 3 snubs concerning that Jannik Sinner portion of the draw. I think that Tommy Paul does honestly have a decent shot at upsetting Sinner. I could see the headlines of, Paul just getting the upset over Sinner on Ash. I can see it happening. He has the game to do so, and I think that Sinner, should that hip injury flare up, I think Paul is the perfect player to take advantage of that. But I just stuck with the more, solid Jannik to come through eventually there. And then Stefanos Tsitsipas, I'm not saying that that's a huge snub, to be honest, because his form really has not looked all that great. I think that he is still finding himself after recently letting go of his coach as his father. Felix Auger-Aliassime, to me, is more of a bigger snub, as he has showed tremendous strides this summer. I just think that ultimately, though, Medvedev will be stronger of the two should they meet. Although Felix did get the recent win over Daniil in the Olympics, but still Medvedev has only lost to Felix only one time in their 6 meetings total. The biggest snub of all, of course, would be Carlos Alcaraz and having Sebi Korda in his place in that quarterfinal instead of him. I think that Alcaraz, there's obviously a chance that the draw will open up for him, and I was going to still have him come through and, prevail, but I just do think that the ankle injury that he has sustained in practice today is another added factor, not to mention, the poor run of form that he's had recently. I mean, not even poor run of form. He only had one bad match, to be honest. And he is another player who really loves to show up and show out for the slams. But I do think he just has a lot going against him as far as, of course, the draw. And I don't think that he is fully mentally, emotionally, and physically over that Olympics loss. And not to mention, he's played so much tennis this summer, making the finals or better at Roland Garros, the Olympics, Wimbledon. I think that that will ultimately catch up with him here. And then the lefties, Jack Draper and Alejandro Tabilo, they could potentially make a little bit of a run here, but I'm not too pressed about leaving them out and putting Korda in their place. And then I did omit Alex de Minaur and Hubert Hurkacz. I think that this was a huge chance for Hubie to go deep and even make a final, but I think that him withdrawing from Cincinnati is just a bad omen and is more worrying. And I think that it's not a means of just being preventative and not wanting to push things too much for New York. I think that it was indicative of a more serious issue. And then instead of Zverev, that could have had Rune or Musetti come through in that little section. And then, of course, Casper Ruud, too, in that above section, who's projected to face Alexander Zverev in the quarterfinal. Ruud has not had the best run of form lately, and I could see that turning around here in New York. He is another player who tends to perform better in the majors and thrives on the best-of-5 format, but I do think that Taylor Fritz and being aided by the crowd support will come through there. And then, too, Matteo Berrettini. I think Could he upset Taylor in that second round match? He could go on another run and make another semifinal. You never know. And then lastly, there are Grigor Dimitrov instead of Andrei Rublev. I could see Grigor having a decent run in this tournament and make that quarterfinal instead of Andre, but I don't think that it's a huge, snub, as I don't think that either Rublev or Dimitrov will win the title. I think Rublev would have a better shot at winning the title instead of Dimitrov, but anyways. And then Lehechka, I think, could be a threat for Rublev, and I could see another early slam loss for Andre should those two meet in the third round. Ben Shelton and Francis Tiafoe, I think maybe if Novak is off his game, should Novak meet the second week, they could definitely do something. I think that Shelton would have a better shot at doing that, as he has the more firepower of the two. And then can't forget Alexei Popyrin. Potentially, he could maybe do another shock and beat Novak in that third round, but I do think that the Joker will be on his game, knowing that the last few times that he's played Popyrin, he's been pushed tremendously. So I just do see Novak making it through to the semifinals. And then answering the last big question of why I ultimately decided to have Jannik Sinner as our U.S. Open men's champion. Tommy Paul is his biggest threat early in the tournament, but I do sense that Sinner, his draw will open up a lot, especially with the likes of Alcaraz, Alex de Minaur, and Hurkacz not being 100%. And I do see a lot of carnage in the sections just below Sinner's. You can't also deny his great form that he's had coming into this tournament, winning Cincinnati despite the conditions there not being the greatest. I think that will do wonders for his confidence having that 1,000 title under his belt. And two, he's just done well at all the slams lately. I think he's on a run of making the quarterfinals or better at a major since the 2023 Wimbledon Championships, and I see that streak continuing here. I think the whole PR stuff surrounding the news of his prior positive drug tests coming out they're blowing over pretty well so far. So I don't anticipate that being a major factor and a major deterrent in him going deep in this tournament. I really am more concerned about that hip injury that he's seemingly been carrying lately, and he did manage it well in Cincinnati and was able to win it. So I have faith that he'll be able to manage it still here, despite this being best of 5. I think that Novak's draw is actually pretty challenging, not gonna lie, and while I don't see him losing early, I do see him being pushed a lot in those third round, fourth round matches, which could catch up to him in the end of the tournament, as well as he's still 37 years old and playing best of 5 tennis, and still the knee could become a factor later on in the tournament. I was very close to having Zverev win this tournament too. He's been knocking on the door for a minute of winning a slam, been playing well all season, and has been going deep at mostly all the big tournaments. However, I did take into account the mental block of him trying to win his first slam, especially with this being best of 5, and how I believe that best of 5 format has kind of caught up to him in a negative way in the latter part of these big tournaments. I also just could not pencil him in as being a winner because I just don't want that to happen, being truly transparent with you. I know I don't like to be biased, but I don't like the guy, y'all. I'm sorry. And I really do not want a Sinner-Zverev final here, because while their Cincinnati Open semifinal last week was long and I guess full of drama, the quality was crap. It was mid, and it was really kind of dreadful. But anyways, I feel like with the year that Sinner has had, and with all the titles and accolades that he's picked up, it's only fitting that he lift another slam title in 2024. Do y'all agree with me having Sinner take it all, or will another man etch their names on the trophy? Make sure y'all drop your own picks and predictions in the comments, and I'll make sure to reply to as many of them as I can. And then 2, make sure y'all subscribe and click that notification bell so you all are notified whenever I post more content throughout the fortnight. Thank you all again for your support, and I'll see y'all next time here on Christian's Court.